Greetings, you all. Praise Yah for this day and for the gathering of the saints. Let your kingdom come and your will be done. So, after the great data dump this week, or the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of confirmation, so to speak, in some of the views that I've had, and I'm sure with others too. I got a request or a suggestion from Catherine that perhaps the Crusades would be a good topic. So I thought, yeah, I'm interested in the Crusades. Are you? Well, up there, the picture of an idealized crusader with his great helm and his shield and blazoned on his chest, white field with a red cross, which was a diktat of the Pope to do this. The Crusades do remain, and I'm going to pull that forward more in today's light. But it's such a political topic. It's charged from all three of the main players that it's really difficult to come up with any definite conclusion. And I've seen where the writers on this topic agree with that. Sorry. It's okay. Thank you. Come on. Okay, the background is based on this tapestry from the period that depicts a group leaving for the Crusades. And here's the quote from one of the scholars. No scholar educated on the subject should feel comfortable making a definitive conclusion. I agree with that. You can't. We're not firsthand on any of this. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, those are the three players that are consistent with this whole thing. Each faction carries its own biases, the ever-present victim class, and an aggressor. So everybody's going to come at it from their own perspective. There was a build-up to the Crusades. They just didn't say, okay, let's get together and have a crusade. What do you think? You bring the beer and I'll bring the potato chips. So the Islamic presence in Europe was firmly established, particularly in the Iberian Peninsula and in Sicily. I want you to look at this 1000. By 1000 AD, this was a settled long-term occupation by the Islamists. Beginning in 711, it wasn't a fresh, rapid invasion. It was a creeping occupation. They call that soft jihad today. So they come in as friendliness, and then when they get to a certain number, they start asserting themselves onto the native population. Pardon, brother? Sounds very familiar. It really does. So what I'd like you to... I had a mind's eye vision in the wee hours the other day. and I saw a wheel with a notch in it. You know those wheels that they run across the ground to tell you how far you're going or how many feet your driveway is or whatever? It was like that, only it was in 1,000-year increments. And the wheel dropped from Yeshua. The wheel rolled ahead and stopped at 1,000. And then it rolled ahead again and stopped at 2,000. It's very interesting that these crusades kind of gel with the turn of the millennium, just like today. So here it is. By 1060, Christians were not only nibbling at the edges of the Islamic world, but were actually gaining territory in Sicily and Spain. No doubt the Pope was feeling a little bit anxious at the blooming presence of the Muslims in Europe. So we talk about the Crusades. 1096, they started. We just saw it was 1060, really, where it started in, to 1291. There were many crusades. This is where the first crusades were, as we just discussed, directed against the Muslims of Spain and Palestine. So you had a religious sort of fervor, and I think it sort of harkens back to the people were there. That's our old homeland, and we don't want this going on in our homeland, right? We don't want the Muslims taking over Jerusalem, particularly.
Was Israel called Palestine at that time?
That's what they called it, yep. Israel is really, we've gone through that a little bit, but I'm not going to go into that now. The Crusaders took vows, and it was very solemn. And it meant one was willing to fight against the Muslims, heretical Christians, pagans in the lands far distant from Western Europe. I believe right here, heretical Christians, Crusaders would be after us too. They would try to kill us. We're keeping the Sabbath. Oh boy, that's against the papacy. Think about the other things we're doing and the truths we've come to. And the people that were practicing the same thing back then were subject to danger by these vows. They offered plenary indulgences, the Pope did, to those that took up the cross. And that's the terminology they used, taking up the cross. So that would be complete absolution of all your sins. Pretty cool, huh? Everything you did. So you weren't living a very good life. You go on a crusade. Hey, I'm free. See, they got legal protection, spiritual privileges, which the Pope has all the authority in the world to give them, but required strict devotion. So if you backed out of your vow, you were excommunicated. But here's the fact of the regular people. The regular Joe that went on these things. Their heart was in the right place. There is no doubt that most men and women who took the cross were God-fearing people. These are all going to be quotes from various sources, dozens of them. So I just put the quote marks on them so that you know that they're not mine. So the votum carried significant religious connotations. And these oaths were considered binding under human and divine law. Whoever therefore shall determine upon this holy pilgrimage, and shall make his vow to God to that effect, and shall offer himself to him as a living sacrifice. Does that sound familiar? Holy, acceptable unto God. So the vows taken by the Crusaders were deeply religious in nature, combining traditional concept of Christianity with the idea of the Holy War. And that's something we'll pull forward. The vows taken by knights and lay people were central to the mobilization and inspiration of the Crusaders and kept them in the fight. See, that was an arduous task, going from central Western Europe through all that landscape to make it to the Holy Land. A lot of them decided they weren't going to finish it up because it was so difficult. You're going on foot. Some of them went by ship. So they would remember their vows, and that would keep them going when things became difficult. Pope Urban, he's the guy that gave the big speech that really launched the Crusades, invoking all sorts of biblical scriptures. So he said the old knights murdered fellow Christians. Yeah, they did. The new knight loved God and neighbor by fighting evil. That's how they switched this thing around. If the knights loved their souls, which I'm sure they did, they should fight the barbarians who had slain their brothers. Well, I thought they were slaying their brothers too, weren't they? And if they perished as martyrs and gained eternal praise. Sounds like something else too. That sounds like what I hear from the Muslims. So here's the map of the various, well, there's 4 of them. 4 journeys. There are many more, but there's 4 here. The purple one is the first crusade. You can see where they started in the Alps, and they went down into Sicily. They took a boat and sailed to Jerusalem. This was the overground route, which is very, very difficult. And these ones here didn't really make it to Jerusalem. Just the ones that went by boat. Here's something that's kind of relevant for today and for our, as Christians. What happens when religion, their unifying factor, the leaders of the crusade, becomes a point of debate or even a tool in the power struggle between the different leaders of the crusade? So when you have this struggle for power, things deteriorate and they crumble. By 1267, which is almost 200 years, a little over, people began to question the benefit of participating in the Crusades. Well, I'm not seeing much benefit, so let's don't. Some of the symbols I'm going to show, a couple, there's only a couple, are buzzwords today. They spark a reaction, which was implanted. You'll see. Right here, swastikas the fleur-de-lis, they're quite recognizable yet today. But I'm going to show you that it wasn't always this way. We don't go, Nazis, when we see a swastika. That's only been since World War II. Temple Mount motifs found in the rubble. What do you see there? There's your swastika, right? Carved into the rock of the temple. Solomon's temple was not included here. So this is Herod's, but it was all throughout the temple as a decoration. What it meant to them, I know not. Now, on these shields here, that's a Crusader Jerusalem cross. Somehow I lost my picture of the Crusader cross. It might show up later. So the Crusades are alive and well today. It really hit me when I started looking into this, how parallel these things really were. Here's the pilgrimage sites from the Crusade. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, Church of the Nativity, the Mount of Olives, the Upper Room, Via Dolorosa, Galilee, Caesarea. Are you familiar with these? Sea of Galilee, Mount of Beatitudes, Mount Tabor, etc., etc. Do you see that you could book a tour with the very same itinerary today? Right? These are the places people go when they go over to Israel. There's the Jerusalem cross. That is in the Upper Room building. And there's been some recent discoveries about the Upper Room, which shows scratchings into the wall and charcoal drawings made by the Crusaders when they came in for their pilgrimage, only to be plastered over by the Muslims so that they wouldn't have to see the occupant of the first set of people that owned it, so to speak. It's my impression that the Upper Room was a Crusader structure anyway. So taking up the cross, biblical scriptures used to inspire participation. You can see where he that taketh not his cross and followeth after me is not worthy of me. So that's where they got the taking up of the cross. They put on the whole armor of Elohim, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil, etc. But here, let's look at this, because the same theme was present in the Mayflower, or not the Mayflower, on Christopher Columbus's journey. You can see the crosses, which were verbatim the way they were on the Crusaders' apparel. So the Crusader theme carried through during the 1492 launch of these vessels to find the New World. Today, George W. Bush. We remember the Gulf War, the Second Gulf War. So there was two of them. George W. characterized the coming war as a crusade. And it wasn't lost on the Muslims what he was referring to. Muslims knew better than to regard the president's characterization of the conflict to be to come as purely accidental. No way, it was an accident. This is reliving, because the Crusades were eventually put down by the Muslims. So going back into their land and fighting a war over there harked back to that time. So it was no accident that George did that. So you got the American troops climbing up the ziggurat, which wasn't an Islamic symbol, but is a national Babylonian religious edifice. But you're looking at a conquering army taking steps up to an edifice in an Islamic country. It's in Iran. No, Iraq. Iraq. I think it's Iraq, between Tigris and Euphrates down there. Is that right? This is what I believed, and I found somebody that agreed. The Crusades were the Crusades were an exercise in apocalyptic millennialism. Is it only an accident that the First Crusade and Bush's were both keyed to the turning of a millennium? The 1,000 years has something to do with the psychology of apocalyptic notions. We certainly have them now. They certainly had them then. It was about liberation when they went in. We remember the statue being pulled down of Saddam Hussein. New millennium, right? 2003. Today, the three players are still working to do the other in. Christians and Jews bombing Islam. We're seeing that, and we've seen that for decades. Islam invades the Christians. We've seen the hordes come up from the south by airplane and just any other way you can get majority fighting age Muslim men into the country. Millions of them. And the Jewish subversion of Christians. This was proven beyond a doubt last week. Michael Wolff. War between Jews and non-Jews, period. Jews are presently winning. It's not over, folks. This is still a war. The Crusades are still going on. You think this isn't happening? This is another thing that came to me. I talked about it, probably 2 years ago during one of our visits, and I'll never use the term elite. Elite. They do believe they are the sons of God. These sons of God, these are the people that you don't see, the ones that have come up with all the heinous atrocities those ones are the ones that are underlings. They sold their soul for power, and it was used against them right now with this data dump. So the more higher you want to go up the pyramid, the more heinous the atrocities you must commit to pay homage to the gods, which we talked about last time. Those ancient gods are still alive. They're still moving. So many in this country worship athletes, celebrities, the mega rich. They worship material, presidents and kings and prime ministers, it's financial wizards, all realizing, not all without realizing what was done to attain their status. It's a fact. This is going on now, and my fear is that once this comes out in the full, it will signal the downfall of the Western civilization. A man from Russia said last week that we can know, if you're going to make a deal with these people from the West, be advised that you could be sitting next to someone who's committed all these atrocities. How can you do that? How can anyone sit and make a deal thinking that that guy's been involved in some of this stuff, which I will not mention? Yes, they had the expose, the release of these documents were designed to close the book on the Western civilization. And it's happening. People are starting to fall out to the wayside. It's just beginning. There's way more to come out. The disclosure. That's what it really is. How can you trust anybody that's achieved a certain level of fame or fortune and not suspect that they were involved in some of this stuff? So shaken to the core. I've quoted Albert Pike before, but now it's fruited. It is now going on. Will we be in this boat? The multitude's disillusioned with Christianity because look at what they do. We're guilty by association. No, we're not, but that's what they're going to think. Whose spirits will be from that moment without direction and leadership and anxious for an ideal. Where do we put our homage? But without knowledge where to send its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of what's his name. That's what they're trying to achieve here. Now, we talked about this last time a little too. They're building, and this is from a Jewish man who knows a little about Kabbalah. And he was able to read the chalkboard that they photographed when they went into the lair. He told blank by blank what was going on to the letter. They are building a throne of God So an artificial throne of God is coming to fruition right before our eyes, and that's true. The data centers, the encroachment of all the AI, the electronic money, etc., is all playing into this. This is the scary part. There is something called a digital twin, which is a sort of an android version of each one of us. They have the data on us. They know what we're going to do. Then they try to, with that data, they try to predict what's going to happen in the real world by seeing what this digital twin will do in the AI. You follow? So this data that's being stored on all of us is being used to educate the artificial intelligence on each one of us. They're not just watching you, they are testing your digital twin to see how they can break you. And it's not just, they're not worried about the people that have fallen into this debauchery. They're worried about us. They're worried about people that are taking the commandments of Yah seriously and they're living them out. You're an outlier. You're a threat because you can't be controlled, right? Why do they do this? Why the satanic rituals, which we did not get into? Because this is really what they believe. The people running this board believe they are the Nephilim bloodline. Yeshua said, the synagogue of Satan. I found this prayer, which I'm sure we've all heard of, more of a, yeah, forgive us, Father, but more than that, an affirmation of who is in charge of this world, who gets the power and the glory forever and ever when this thing they're building is defeated. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Nothing new under the sun.